Why is there no transparency in the police hiring process? Let's discuss. Hey, before we get started, I have two gifts in the description for you. One is the Getting Started workshop. It's going to walk you through every phase of the hiring process, let you know what you're in for, give you that knowledge you need to succeed. Plus, there's some hidden bonuses in there as well. Additionally, we have the free coaching call for you. Sign up for a free coaching call. We'd be glad to sit down, cover anything about your specific hiring process and any guidance we can give you. Our gifts to you. Use both of them. Look forward to it. Now, why is there a lack of transparency in the police hiring process? And some might say maybe there's not, right? Some will say, hey, I mean, my department tells me exactly what the process looks like, tells me exactly, hey, this is your first step, this is your second step, this is your third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh step. There's a lot of steps. Other departments may not show that, but it depends on where you are. So if you're on the side where I think there's transparency, if you've ever been turned down by a department, you'll learn that they will not disclose the reason for you not being selected or for you being disqualified, which makes it very difficult when you apply to another department to say, hey, I applied to XYZ department, I wasn't selected or I was disqualified, and now I'm applying to this department, to try to start my career into law enforcement. Then the new department's going to say, well, why were you disqualified? And you're going to say, honestly, I do not know, because as you know, law enforcement departments, you sign a waiver saying that they do not have to disclose any information to you and they refuse the right to disclose it. And every department will always do that. And it's an HR thing. And the best thing you can do is just move on from it. That's right. I wish I had some big hidden secret and just say, hey, yep, file, a FOIA request and then get tied up in litigation and requests. And chances are you may or may never get it. But ultimately, is it going to help you? No. Will it make you feel better? Maybe, but maybe not, right? If you find out, hey, they think I didn't do well on my polygraph or my background investigation, does that really help you? No, because now you can just go to the next department and say, hey, unfortunately, I didn't make it past the background section, or I didn't make it past the poly or the board interview. And they say, okay, well, what do you think happened? You say, honestly, I don't know. I thought everything was going good. But in a week or so later, I received a letter saying that I'm no longer being considered for this hiring process and to reapply in a year. It's a typical generic letter, right? If you've seen one before. So why the lack of clarity, right? There's a few reasons for this. Let's go the employment route. If they disclose why they didn't hire you or why you failed that portion, most people are just going to argue it. And they don't have time for it. They need to keep the hiring process moving. They don't have time to be dealing with you. So it's just easier to get you to say, you agree that at the whatever happens in this process, we do not have to disclose anything to you. You sign that document, move on. You want to fight it, take us to court. Most people aren't going to waste that time, or they're not going to waste that reputation in the law enforcement community, right? Because if you're trying to get into law enforcement, it's very unlikely that you're going to sue a law enforcement department that you're trying to get hired with. So, especially if you're applying to everything in the same local area, because all those departments talk to one another. So that's the main reason, right? It covers them legally. They're good to go. They don't have to disclose. It doesn't give away any of their hiring practices so that no one can try to learn to game the system. A lot of underlying minor things, but that's the major component right there. Is that the right way to do it? Yes and no, right? So yes, it's the right way to do it because no, you don't want to be bogged down in all this stuff, and ultimately we select you or we don't select you. But why not make the system more clear? And what I mean by that is look at all these other very good recruiting practices. That could be all the way from the military and the Navy SEALs, all the way to a Fortune 500 company recruiting even a mid level employee or a new employee. It doesn't matter. They're going to have these recruiters out there on LinkedIn. They're going to have these recruiters out there in different areas. They're going to be reaching out to people and trying to work people through the process. Now, understand that people apply and they have, things in their backgrounds, or they misarticulate themselves, and the department says, you're not the right person for us in this role. It doesn't mean you're not the right person for a department, but you're not the right person for us. So each department will have its own needs, right? Its own needs for what that new officer needs to fulfill, right? If they're hiring a new officer that says, "Hey, I have a family, I can't leave my children at home, by themselves, so I need to work day shift and only day shift." Well, a department might say, "I'm sorry, but that doesn't fit the needs right now because we have 3 open night shift positions, and when it comes to who gets selected for what position, that's based off of seniority." So that individual might not fit the requirements of that job post. It's up to that department. So you can't sit here and say, "Oh, if they do it this one way and every department does it that way, it's perfect." No, there's no such thing as perfect, but you can set a baseline. So let's go back to those good departments that tell you, here's the process. This is what it's going to look like. You're going to have this, right? And on this date at this time, or on these dates at this time, we're holding 3 PT exams, right? If you pass the PT exam, you get invited to the written exam, or vice versa, right? You pass the written exam, you get invited to the physical exam. At that point in time, you got 3 dates to sign up for that. So now one's a week, right? So now you're 6 weeks into the hiring process. And then after we get all that, then we have the board interview, right? You're going to have 3 dates to schedule for a board interview. They're all going to be during the same week. So a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, right? Beautiful. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, those officers are put on admin duty to facilitate this. Couple senior ranking individuals, couple mid-ranking individuals, probably an FTO. They do board interviews for those 3 days. Now, they might do, if you have 30 open vacancies, they might do 60 board interviews, right? And then they might push through 45 of those people, right? Because you got to account for people failing out. Now, here's where it gets complicated. Now you have these individuals that have made it past this, and maybe there's a chief interview, maybe there's not a chief interview. Maybe the chief's interview is after those board interviews. Doesn't matter if it's in there, you fit it in. If it's not in there, you don't worry about it. But then you go to your investigative phase, and I'm putting everything together in your best. That's your background, that's your poly, that's your medical, and that's your psych, right? So now you're in this cumulative phase that's broken up of different phases. And you go to your background investigator. So you pass your board, you get handed your packet. The packet is due by this date, must be submitted however it needs to be submitted. It's due by this date. And then interviews start on these dates, and you will be contacted based on a review of your background. You'll be contacted in whatever order the background investigators want to contact you, and they'll bring you in for either a in-person interview, a Zoom interview, or a phone interview, however they want to do it. I'm a big proponent of leveraging technology these days to mitigate the stress on people, because ultimately I can still look at you and still get body language cues from video, right? So if you say, "Hey, I want to be able to read the individual, see if they're lying to me," you can still use video that, although nothing's better than in person. So you can, once again, have them come in person, or just do it another way, leveraging technology. Then you go through that, right? At that point in time, you're in background phase. Background phase doesn't end until you get hired. You're in background phase. They do everything. Your initial screening looks good. Bam, schedule a polygraph. This is where it really starts getting complicated, because usually the background investigator is still an employee of the department. But your polygraph, your medical, and your psych typically, not all the time, some departments are big enough to have all of these in-house, but typically are handled by third-party individuals. So it behooves a recruitment team ahead of time to schedule with their third-party individuals. These are the dates we're looking to run these things. Now, you can never account for human error, and you can never account for issues such as a doctor needing to take time off, or someone getting sick, or weather, or storm shutting down facilities, things like that. But you just have to set a plan. You can't say, "Oh, we're not going to set any plan," because those things might happen. So you set a plan that, hey, on these dates, we will be running polygraphs. So we have 45 applicants. Let's say 40 of them make it past the initial screening phase, right? and then each individual's taking roughly 13 applicants, one's taking 14 over 3 days, right? Or that polygraph has to do that many over the course of, let's say, 2 weeks. Let's say you have to do 40 applicants over 2 weeks. That's 20 applicants a week. That's what, 5 applicants maybe over 4 days, right? Or less, actually, if you're trying to get it done in 1 week. But that's the way you would do it, and that's why you set it up, and you would pre-set it up with those with those third-party organizations. And then from there, same thing. You would go to your med, same setup with the med, but now at this point, you have less members, right? Because not everyone makes it through the polygraph. So then you have less members. And then by the time you get there and you do, once again, you schedule with the psych. One thing that I would leverage if I was running this across, I would leverage the psych exam being completed virtually, right? With a a proctor, but one proctor could virtually do via two-way video communication, could administer an exam, and then they can do the written exam, and then that way, then they could go in and do the psych exam with the actual psychologist. And once again, you could also leverage technology to do it this way. I'm not saying you have to. I'm just saying you could, to make the process more streamlined. And all this can be conveyed to the applicants. Now, here's the problem. Here's where we run into the issue is you submit your written exam. You submit your application. Usually you have no idea when you're going to get contacted. You're waiting for emails. I can't tell you how many applicants miss out on a hiring process because they miss their emails. I'm not giving them a pass. That's their fault. I always tell them to make sure you're watching your emails, but it goes to spam. It doesn't matter. They miss an email, they miss the date, and they beg for forgiveness and try to still stay in that hiring cycle. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But so you don't know when that email is going to come. You sign up for it. You take it, you pass, then you don't know when the PT is going to be, right? Because none of this is pre-planned. And then you take the PT and they say, okay, great, we'll contact you to set up the board interview, but you have no idea when. You don't even know if, you passed the PT, but you don't know if that guarantees you a shot at the board interview. And that's where they need to be more transparent, right? Post the numbers to say where you rank in it. Hey, everyone above the 40th or 60th line for all applicants, right, is moving forward with the hiring process. Everyone below the 60th line, right, and you have a point system for your physical, is not moving forward in this hiring process. And then same thing with the board. Have it online where you can have someone's name listed and say this individual moves forward, or have a secure server where they can look, or get those emails out as soon as possible, right? Have a system, having structure and having system. The military uses this, law enforcement uses this in every other aspect except for the recruitment process. And while they do have a structure or they have an outline, it's just an outline with no actual structure. And the departments that do have that structure get the best qualified applicants and get the most applicants, even in today's world, because people are drawn to knowing what's going on in their pursuit for a career, not a job, but a career. And that's where that transparency really comes into play, because the departments that are doing it, they're crushing it. They have the highest ranked applicants, that those are scoring the best. Because they're such good departments, they are able to increase their pay. Because they're able to increase the pay, they're able to grab more qualified out, and it just keeps going. And it's just a building circle every single day when they run their process. While other departments are just, oh, we're revamping our process, but there's no structure to it. And it really winds up hurting you with getting qualified candidates, and winds up hurting you with screening those qualified candidates, and you're possibly missing out on some really good ones. So for you, unfortunately, it is what it is. Take it for what it is. And it's hard to know which department is a really good department, because they might have it beautifully listed on their website. And I tell my coaching members this all the time. Just because they have it listed for these times, do not, if they make those times, great. Good department, really, really appreciate them sticking to what they put. But if they fall short, don't hold it against them, because it happens all the time, right? Don't say, oh, I was supposed to hear back. This was supposed to be a 16-week hiring process, and I'm on week 24. They're 10 weeks behind. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I can't tell you how many times I've had departments tell me, we're going to bring you in this month. 4 months later, they say, okay, we finally got a start date for you. No, don't even worry about it. It is what it is until we can start improving these recruitment processes in the police application process. I hope this helps. Listen, those gifts are still in the description. Download them, or excuse me, use them. Go in, get the getting started workshop, watch all that, get the added benefits in there that I think you'll enjoy. And then on top of that, sign up for a free coaching call. I'd love to sit down, talk with you, go through your application process, give you any guidance I can to make sure you become a law enforcement officer where you want, when you're ready, as soon as possible. I'll talk to you soon. Have a good one.